Chapter 1 The Arrival. The air was thick with mist when Clara arrived at the house. It was late in the evening, and the worn-out car that had carried her through endless roads now sputtered to a halt in front of an imposing manor. The house, called Greythorne, stood dark and brooding, its silhouette looming against the dimming sky. The windows were like hollow eyes, empty and unblinking. Yet, a strange pull seemed to draw her in. Clara had inherited the house from her late uncle, a man she had known only through the occasional letter and a few hurried visits as a child. His sudden death, shrouded in mystery, had left her with a modest fortune, and this decrepit estate. The lawyer had been strangely evasive when she inquired about the cause of death, suggesting only that she take the inheritance and leave the past behind. But Clara was a woman of resolve, and she had no intention of doing so. What little she knew of the man had left her intrigued. He was a scholar of the occult, and the house, she had learned, was filled with strange artifacts and ancient tomes, things that might finally unlock the mystery of his obsession with the supernatural. She took a deep breath and stepped from the car. The wind howled like the anguished cries of the damned, and the ivy that clung to the stone walls seemed to writhe as if alive. Clara's breath misted in the cold air as she made her way to the front door, the key to her inheritance heavy in her palm. The door creaked open, revealing a darkened hallway. As she stepped inside, the temperature dropped sharply. The smell of damp wood and old books filled the air, and the silence was deafening. Yet, as Clara stood there, she couldn't shake the feeling that she was being watched. From the corners of the hall, from behind the drapes, from the shadows that seemed to stretch unnaturally far, eyes followed her every movement. She turned on her heel, closing the door behind her. Her heart pounded in her chest. The house was alive with secrets, and she intended to uncover them. Chapter 2 The First Night. Night fell quickly, and with it came a sense of dread. The house seemed to grow more oppressive with every passing hour. Clara tried to sleep, but the silence was too thick, too suffocating. Every creak of the floorboards, every gust of wind against the old windows, sent her heart racing. It was as though the house itself was restless, as if it were waiting for something, or someone. Just as her eyelids began to droop, a sound echoed through the dark. At first, it was a whisper, so faint she thought it might have been the wind. But then, it grew clearer, louder, as though someone was speaking right outside her door. Clara. Clara. Her name. A chill ran down her spine. She bolted upright, eyes wide, searching the room. The darkness was oppressive, yet she could see nothing. The whispering continued, a soft, insistent murmur, drawing closer. Clara. It wasn't her uncle. She had never heard that voice before, but it was undeniably familiar. A shiver ran through her as the sound seemed to move closer, pressing against the very walls. It was then that she saw it, a shadow, flickering just beyond her door. A figure, tall and thin, lingering in the hallway. Who's there? Clara's voice trembled as she tried to steady her breath. The figure didn't respond. It merely stood there, its presence a dark stain against the darkness. For a moment, Clara thought she saw it move, its shape shifting, warping, as if it were made of smoke. Then, with a sound like a sigh, it vanished. Clara's heart raced. She was alone in the room, but the air felt heavier than ever. The whispering had stopped, but the feeling of being watched only intensified. She wasn't alone, not by a long shot. Chapter 3 The Secrets Beneath. The next morning, Clara explored the house in greater detail. She had to know what was happening, why the house seemed so alive with strange, unexplainable forces. She stumbled across a hidden door in the library, an old oak panel that gave way to a staircase spiraling down into the darkness below. A chill ran through her, but curiosity won out. She descended, her footsteps muffled by the thick layer of dust that coated the wooden stairs. At the bottom of the stairs, Clara found herself in a small, windowless chamber. The air was stale, thick with the scent of age and mildew. On a stone pedestal in the center of the room was an ancient book, its leather cover cracked and worn. A golden clasp held it shut, gleaming in the dim light of her flashlight. Clara's fingers trembled as she reached for it, unfastening the clasp. The book fell open easily, as though it had been waiting for her. The pages were filled with strange symbols, diagrams of twisted figures, and writing in a language she could barely comprehend. The words on the page seemed to pulse, alive with some unknown energy. She flipped through the pages, heart pounding. There were references to rituals, to the invocation of spirits, and to something called the Whispering. The final entry was a warning, written in a hurried scrawl. Do not listen to the whispers. They are not what they seem. They are the voices of those who have been lost. Clara felt a knot tighten in her stomach. She wasn't alone in this house, no, the whispers had been here long before her. They were waiting. Watching. Suddenly, the air around her seemed to grow cold. A voice whispered from behind her. You shouldn't have opened it. Clara spun around, but the room was empty. Her heart thudded in her chest as she dropped the book. The whispers had returned, louder now, all around her. They weren't just in her mind, they were real. Chapter 4, The Unraveling. The house seemed to collapse around Clara, as though it were disintegrating, piece by piece. Every night, the whispers grew louder, more insistent. And each day, she uncovered more secrets, hidden rooms, forgotten journals, and old portraits whose eyes followed her wherever she went. The figure she had seen in the hallway began to appear more frequently. It would stand in the shadows, waiting. Clara tried to speak to it, but it never answered. It simply watched her with hollow, unblinking eyes. Her sleep was plagued by nightmares, visions of a dark figure dragging her into the depths of the house, pulling her into the very walls, where she could hear the cries of those who had disappeared before her. It was as if the house had consumed them all, her uncle, the past tenants, and now her. One evening, as she wandered the halls in a haze of exhaustion, Clara found herself in the attic. She had never been there before, but something drew her up. There, on a dusty old desk, was another journal, this one much older than the others. She opened it to the first page. They will come for you. They will take you, and you will never leave. The handwriting was unfamiliar, but the words felt like a death sentence. The whispers seemed to converge on her as she read, growing louder until they were deafening. And then, as if by magic, the figure from the hall appeared before her, its shape becoming clearer in the dim light. It reached out, its fingers cold and skeletal, brushing Clara's cheek. The air crackled with energy, and Clara felt her breath freeze in her chest. Welcome, it whispered. You've come home. Chapter 5, The House Winds. The next morning, Clara's body was found. The house, quiet as ever, held no answers, no clues to her fate. The villagers, who had long whispered about Greythorne, weren't surprised. They knew the truth, the house was cursed. It devoured those who stayed too long, trapping their souls in its labyrinthine halls. As the sun set, the whispers began again. And somewhere, deep within the shadows of Greythorne, Clara's voice joined the rest. For the house always wins.